Okay, so on the off chance that you can actually, I can't even hear me actually. So anyway, on the off chance that you can, so I picked up on Back in Rationality, the book by Steven Pinker, and well, the very next paragraph I absolutely had to share with you. The next two. So where we left off was not the Bond cut, but the actual original video. Pinker says we have reason. So that's what's before this. Okay, so we're on page 7. So the last thing he said was a major goal of this book is to explain the most widely applicable normative tools of reason. They are the subjects of chapters 3 to 9. Normative models also serve as benchmarks against which we can assess how human I'll put the text on the screen, okay. How humans do reason. The subject matter of psychology and other behavioral sciences. The many ways in which ordinary people fall short of these benchmarks have become famous. Not famous enough, but famous through the Nobel Prize winning research of Daniel Kahneman, Amos Tversky, and other psychologists and behavioral economists. By the way, I often talk about Daniel Kahneman without talking about Amos Tversky. Amos Tversky was his lifelong research partner. I read the Undoing Project, which chronicles their story together. It's just that Amos Tversky died before for their work. Daniel Kahneman was awarded the Nobel Prize, and then also Daniel Kahneman, although they had written stuff together, Amos had already passed. Dr. Tversky had already passed when he wrote Thinking Fast and Slow. So when I mention Daniel Kahneman, know that I'm also talking about Amos Tversky. When people's judgments deviate from a normative model, I like that a lot because we often, even I sometimes accidentally phrase it as our thinking processes deviating from reason, as though from a reasonable process in the mind. So as though there is some default reasonable process, but we sometimes deviate from it. Whereas I don't agree that there is sort of that same pure, reasonable, I don't think, anyway. But he said from a normative model. So something that we can learn from logic, philosophy, mathematics, and artificial intelligence. So it's not that the brain processes were on a track and then deviated, but just when there's a difference between the brain processes and what would be ideal, as there often is, we have a puzzle to solve. Sometimes the disparity reveals a genuine irrationality. The human brain cannot cope with the complexity of a problem, or it is saddled with a bug that cussedly drives it to the wrong answer time and time again. And if it's saddled with this bug that cussedly drives it to the wrong answer time and time again, that bug probably had some evolutionary, more likely than not, had some evolutionary advantage, or it's just a byproduct of something that had some evolutionary advantage. And if it's now at the time of the writing of this book drawing us to the wrong answer, that means that that adaptation that we had, that answer that we had that may have served us in the past, no longer serves us. Or even in the past, it only served us 30% of the time, but that was enough for it to be installed and for it to not really matter the times when it was wrong. Okay. But in many cases, there is a method to people's madness, and you know that makes me uncomfortable. A problem may have been presented to them in a deceptive format, and when it is translated into a mind-friendlier guise, they solve it. And that's what we call revocalating. It's when you rephrase something that won't set off any alarms that it shouldn't, and that will be processed will trigger the processing by the right sort of mechanisms. So when it is translated into a mind-friendlier guise, they solve it. Or the normative model may itself be correct only in a particular environment, and people accurately sense that they are not in that one, so the model doesn't apply. And I'll say the flip side is also true. The instinctive processing, the programs that are already running here. Never mind what philosophy has to say, but the innate ones, or anyway, the ones that are there, they may be correct only in a particular environment, and people do not sometimes accurately sense that they are not in that one, and that the instinct doesn't apply, but they apply it anyway. Or the model may be designed to bring about a certain goal, and for better or worse, people are after a different one. In the chapters to come, we will see examples of all of these extenuating circumstances. All right, so there you go. We talked about critical recognition for what he's been saying, and these two paragraphs relate to critical reflection. And that's when we try to follow or at least know what the normative models are, so that we can try to align our thinking processes with them. So that's reflection, critical reflection. In order to even think to do that, one good way to get there is through critical recognition, knowing that you're a brain and knowing that there are many ways in which ordinary us people fall short of these benchmarks, and they have become famous, not famous enough, through the Nobel Prize-winning research of Daniel Kahneman, Amos Tversky, and other psychologists and behavioral economists. Okay. Oh, and David McRaney.